welcome Hoosier fans to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 214th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 713th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of May 27th, 2021. I'm your host, the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Martin takes a shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred on Wednesday morning when Coach Woodson met with the media. There's a lot of good basketball discussion in that media availability, but there's really a bigger issue, and that is that Coach Woodson seems very comfortable in his role as the head coach at Indiana. This is something that has not been, or that has been amiss for far too many years. When Coach was asked by Greg Doyle, quote, "Why are you doing this?" end quote, Coach's answer was basically, it's part of the job. Maybe this could be interpreted in different ways, but to me it shows that Coach is aware that the media, the fans, and the community appreciate knowing what's going on with Indiana basketball. The idea that Coach is aware and comfortable in sharing information is a good change. Yes, this is the honeymoon phase, and we have yet to see a Coach Woodson team play on the court, but it seems like we have a leader who is not fazed by the enormity of the position. We have a leader who is willing to take charge and do things the way he wants to do it and is proud of what he is doing and doesn't mind sharing. We can only hope this leads to great success on the court. Okay, let me introduce my esteemed co-host for tonight. With Andy and Jared off tonight, my co-host for this evening will be all too happy to fill the empty airtime with his own rumors, rants, and hot takes.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
It's the one and only Ryan Phillips back from vacation. Ryan, do you have an opening rant for us this evening?
Yeah, I think, and this isn't necessarily IU sports or IU basketball related, but I think it's tangentially related to just being a fan. And let me just say, what we saw last night in the NBA playoffs, Russell Westbrook getting popcorn dumped on him, an entire crowd of people telling Trae Young what he could go do to himself, and Trae Young getting spit at by a fan. Let me just sort of say, if you're going to throw something on a court or at a player, if you're going to spit a bodily fluid out of your mouth at a player, if you're going to yell something that's vulgar, racially insensitive, or otherwise at a player, don't. And the reason why is not because, I'm trying to police your fandom. It's because it ruins it for everybody else there when the game has to stop. First of all, it's indecent and it's awful and it's ridiculous and you're a clown for doing that. But at the same time, it ruins the experience for everyone else because they got to stop the game and they got to yell at the fans and tell the fans. And it ruins it for the thousands of other people who are just there to cheer on their team or whatever. I just think that it's amazing that we spent 15 months inside and away from sporting events, and we've come back, and now people don't know how to act. I mean, what we saw at that Knicks game last night was ridiculous, and what you've seen at baseball games where fans are brawling with each other almost every night now. I know because at the Big Lead, we're writing about it, and a lot of you are clicking on those posts, so thank you very much. But it's happening every night. There's fights in the stands. There's just watch the game. Watch the game. Cheer for your team. Have fun. You want to do a small chant about about the other team or play, fine. But you don't need to drop F-bombs, and you don't need to, say questionable things about them. There's a line of decency that has been beyond crossed over the last week. And so I would just say to everybody, go to a game to have fun, not to be a jerk. And I would have much stronger language if I wouldn't get yelled at by Jared Morris for this. But so yeah, just let's be happy we're back in arenas. Welcome opposing fans. You can cheer for opposing teams. You can chant at their players, whatever. But we're all kind of should be all really happy that we get to go back to games now and not in the stands fighting with each other and screaming at players and all that stuff. Just enjoy the fact that we get to go back to sporting events now. That's all I got to say.
Well said. Well said. And here's what we're going to cover this week. Some Hoosier headlines, including updated recruiting rankings for Indiana's class of 2022 targets. Main topic in the second segment, Mike Woodson met with the media this week. Let's break down what we learned, and then we'll end by answering all your questions. All that coming up on Assembly Call Radio. Okay, we have a new sponsor here on the Assembly Call, which means that it's time for us to talk about balls. No, not basketballs, our balls. And I know what you're thinking. Coach, I don't want to hear about your balls. Well, to quote the great Coach Boone from Remember the Titans, this is no democracy. It's a dictatorship. I am the law, so we're going to talk about balls. Gentlemen, spring is here and summer is fast approaching. You and I both know how sweaty and swampy things can get down there when the temperature rises. This is why a product like the Lawnmower 4.0 from Manscaped is so useful. Because when your boys down there are popping their collars a little too high, they need a trim. And the Lawnmower 4.0 is the way to do it. Manscaped engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and an incredible, comfortable grooming experience. Their fourth-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology, plus wireless charging and a 4000K LED spotlight when you need it for a more precise shave. A couple of weeks ago, when Jared told us Manscaped wanted to sponsor the show, I wasn't sure how I was going to use the Lawnmower 4.0. Chest, back, balls, wasn't sure. Not really sure. I want to share with you how I'm using the Lawnmower 4.0, but I'm hearing this a lot more recently around the house from Mrs. Tonsoni.
Catch me if you can, Coach T.
Well, anyway, here's the bottom line. Father's Day is coming up, and this is a great gift for dads and sons everywhere. Over 2 million men worldwide are already Manscaped, and we have this exclusive offer for you. Get 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code AC at manscaped.com. That's promo code AC at manscaped.com for 20% off your order and free worldwide shipping. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Your balls or the balls of someone you love will thank you. And we survived.
Coach, A+. Way to go, buddy.
Thank you very much. So, Lawnmower 4.0. Go out and get yourself one. But here's what we're going to talk about now. We're talking about the Hoosier headlines recruiting-wise. Tamar Bates was named to the 2021 Jordan Brand Classic roster, one of 7 Big Ten players to make it. CJ Gunn rankings, 247, has him at 104th. Rival has him as 149th. Some official visits were announced. Justin Taylor, number 86, 6'6" shooter. Caleb Banks, ranked number 92, a 6'8" power forward. And Kyle Filipowski, the 56th ranked player in the class at 6'11" shooter.
It's a big
Rivals, one. Yes. Really like his game. Rivals released some new rankings, lots of Indiana targets peppered all over the top 100. Jalen Washington from Gary is number 26. Vincent.
Good luck with this one, Coach.
Yeah. Iwachuko from La Lumiere is 29, and it's clear that Coach Woodson is prioritizing size, athleticism, playmaking, and shooting, which almost every coach does when they start out recruiting each class. But he's not being shy about going after top 100 guys, and I think the staff as well is set to do that. Several IU targets made big jumps. Terry Morin gets a new contract, $5.175 million over 6 years, plus some performance bonuses. In a context, Gino makes 2.8 at Kentucky, and Kim Mulkey makes 2.9 per year. Or at UConn. What did I say?
Kentucky,
yeah.
Oh, if Gino was at Kentucky, man, that would just ruin it.
My bad there.
By the way, I just want to chime in and say, well deserved for Terry Morin for that.
Yes, absolutely,
absolutely earned every bit of that. One thing I think I want to mention before we move on is just that you said that, Mike Woodson's prioritizing size, athleticism, playmaking, shooting. I mean, those are all things that obviously everybody targets, but I think that he's also targeting NBA skills, I think, and guys who could fit into the end, having played or coached in the NBA for so long. He's prioritizing guys I think that he could see succeeding at the next level, as opposed to finding a guy in the 130s who can do a couple good things for you in college. I think that he's really prioritizing, hey, now again, we're not going to get all these guys, but he's really going hard after guys that can succeed at the next level. And I think that it might be that he's the kind of guy who can coach that kind of athleticism and that kind of, skill set because he's done it in the NBA. Now, if Indiana is getting high 4-star, low 5-star, or even high 5-star, hey, I'll take one, guys, obviously the program is going to be successful and it's going to be good for the profile of the program. But I also think that coaches need to find players who fit what they do. Tom Crean brought in shooters. I mean, that was, and not defenders typically. And when he got a defender, the guy looked like an all Big Ten defender, like a Victor Oladipo or someone like that. Archie Miller tried to bring in well-rounded kind of coaches' kids, like guys who could, have one really good skill and try and develop the other skills. And it all has to do with the comfort level of what a coach can coach and what he's used to coaching. As a coach, I know you, coach, when you see a guy coming through your program, maybe down in the middle school level and moving up to high school in the JV level, freshman JV level, you notice the kids you're going to enjoy coaching from an early moment because they have the skills that you like to coach. I know that's true. Yeah. I mean, because you're a coach and that's what every coach is. And so I think he's going after guys who look like people he's coached before. And that's what stood out to me. Just looking at the guys he's coached before and sort of the guys that he's bringing in, or at least bringing in for visits and prioritizing recruiting.
I've been so big in the last few years on this idea of closers. And to me, closers are 6'5" to 6'8" who can shoot the three, put the ball on the ground and get to the hoop, get some fouls and some and ones. And, Caleb Banks on the list that we had, and the name is escaping me, Shafino. It's a hyphen name. It was on Inside the Hall recruiting board. Those guys just look like they have an ability to do multiple things offensively. And obviously Indiana needs shooting. That's just been well documented. But it does look like the athleticism, the bigs look like they can handle the ball too and shoot. And that's what college basketball to me is becoming, is 5 guys out there that can play in multiple positions.
Well, and here's the thing. You can't teach the athleticism. You can develop guys' athleticism a little bit more when they get on campus with flexibility and all of those things. But you can't teach that innate next level ability. You can't teach a vertical leap. You can't teach speed. You can't teach that otherworldly stuff. And I think that Woodson seems like the kind of guy who's more willing to develop guys' skill sets than to try and make them a little more athletic to live up to the Big Ten. And I think that that's a flip for the Indiana program. And I also think that, quite frankly, it's a sign that he's confident he can coach guys up and that his staff, not just him, but his staff can coach guys up. And when you have that, there's a lot of guys who come out of high school and are complete players out of high school who they're never going to get that much better. They might get a little quicker, might get a little more vertical, might get this, might get that, might become a little better shooter, but are essentially done developing when they hit college. Some of those guys have really successful college careers. They really do. But there are a lot of guys, there are more guys who need that development. And we've always said that one of the problems with the Archie Miller era was development, was the fact that they would get these guys and they wouldn't get that much better on campus. Now, there were exceptions. Al Durham certainly got better when he was on campus, incrementally. He wasn't a sea change guy. But there are guys who did develop, but it was the exception, not the rule. And I think that development, as much as recruiting rankings do matter. And you hear people say, stars, I don't care what number of stars is he, can he play? In the long run, getting good players and then developing them is the key to winning. Yeah, you're going to get a 3-star. Victor Oladipo falls under the radar and then gets developed into a number 2 pick in the draft. That's going to happen, but that's more rare than seeing a guy who's a good player out of high school, a 4-star, mid 4-star guy, develop into an NBA talent. That happens far more often, and that's what you have to aim for, I think. Everyone's going to aim for that 5-star guy and try and get him, of course, because it's a program changer. It can be, at least. But getting those mid 4-star guys and making them into NBA players and making them into great college players, that's your sweet spot of winning a national title right there. And I think that that's the key for Indiana, is to get those guys and develop them into stars. And also guys who can help out. And a lot of those guys also can come in early and play and contribute, as opposed to some of these 3-star guys who have to sit on the bench and basically develop for a year.
The interesting thing to me, Ryan, is how much the connection to the NBA and Coach Woodson, knowing what goes on in the NBA, is really seeming to matter to a lot of these guys, because recruiting's about relationships. And anytime you have a new coach in a new era, and then they're coming from the NBA in New York to develop the relationships with AAU coaches and all of that, it takes some time. And it seems like we're getting on the top 8, top 5 list of some quality young men in a hurry. And I think that was something that, I'm really opening my eyes to, is that, and then I think he is just an honest broker.
That seems to be what everybody's saying. Yeah.
Everyone's saying it. And I think, in this era where we think a lot of kids need to be, just praised and promised and all of those things, I think there is a spot for, hey, here's what I can do for you. Here's what you need to do to come in and help Indiana win. It's mutually beneficial. If you
here's what you're missing, here's the hole we can fill. Yeah.
Yeah. And boy, I think that's needed to fill that gap that Indiana has had. And so it'll be interesting to see how this closes. Can Coach Ncaa close on some of these? Can Coach Hunter close on some of these?
Right.
I mean, obviously it's Coach Woodson has to do the closing, but can they develop those relationships? It's one thing to get on a top 5 or a top 8 list and to get a visit, which has been tremendous. It's now getting some of these, which, Coach Miller missed out on a few of those when we were down to final 2s and 3s, and that just made all the difference. And so that's been impressive from Coach Woodson in his first 2 months. One
departure from the last staff that I would say too is these guys are casting a very wide net. There are it felt like the last staff, if there was a class, I'm just giving an example here. I'm not referring to a specific time, but let's say there was a class of 3 available. They'd target 6 guys really hard and just go hard after them. These guys are targeting a ton of people because they know, hey, you get a kid on campus, you may not have him as like you may not think you have competition, but you get a guy on campus in Bloomington around these coaches, around these players, you might suck him in and grab him and hook him. And so why not take that chance instead of narrowing your field of vision? There are philosophies with that, though. It's like if you spend all your time on these 6 guys and you go full court press, and the chances you land 3 are probably higher, but it's the chances you land 3 guys are also probably higher if you are also probably really high if you cast a net of 20 as opposed to 6. So the thing is that if you miss on the guys you really want when you cast that net of 6, you're in trouble, and you wind up having open scholarships, and your roster construction isn't great. And then you're banking on transfers or maybe a spring commitment, and that's just not a good place to be for a major college basketball program. So I kind of like the idea of bring in as many guys as you're allowed to, let them see the campus, get them around your coaches. Maybe you wind up liking them more than you thought once you get them on campus. Maybe they end up liking you more than they thought they would. So I think it's a different philosophy, and I'm here for it. I think that it's a good idea to get as many eyes on that campus as possible. And hey, maybe you don't get the guy you're going after, but maybe he's got a teammate that you're going to go back. That kid's going to go back home and talk about what a great time he had. And that kid's going to start thinking, oh, yeah, no, I want to go look at that. I want to go talk to those coaches. These things all have a trickle-down defense or a trickle-down effect. So I think that it's the right decision to go after as many guys as you can at college.
One of the things we don't see too, and we need to understand is the job the staff does, and including everyone underneath the staff who prepares film and scouting reports and itinerary for these things. It takes a whole organization to go out and recruit. And really, the 3 coaches that Coach Woodson has hired to be on his staff really seem to be in tune with some quality players. I would imagine Coach Fife is more in the Midwest, but Coach Ncaa seems to have that connection from his time in other schools, plus the year and a half he was spent just developing players. And it's about relationships. It's that way in my job as an educator. It's that way in coaching too. You've got to have a little bit of trust. And boy, it seems like those guys are pretty good at what they do, at least to get these guys considering Indiana. And then obviously they need to finish it. So, okay, coming up on the Assembly Call Radio, Mike Woodson met with the media, as we mentioned earlier this week. What did we learn? We'll explain our key takeaways next. All that and more coming up on the Assembly Call. All right, everybody. Hello, chat mob. Thanks for joining us here late May as things start to calm down. It's always good to have you back. Always good to talk IU basketball. I'm a little bit under the weather. Sorry for the sexy, deep voice that I'm passing on today and an occasional cough, but we'll try to get through a couple more segments. Welcome, Ryan, back from vacation.
Thanks. It was much needed. It was a little. I got sunburned the first day though. Classic rookie mistake. I mean, I had been out in the sun and stuff, but you're much closer to the equator down there, and it was a little more intense. We were like, we can do 25 minutes more. We could not do 25 minutes more. It was. Madeline and I both got hit by it. My dad actually put on. We had spray bottles of sunscreen and aloe vera, for afterwards or whatever.
Yeah.
And my dad grabbed the aloe vera, sprayed himself down, thinking it was sunscreen, and went out.
Oh no.
He was completely fine. We covered ourselves in sunscreen, got burned like crazy. So, but that was the first day. But we soldiered on. It was fun. We were fine. But yeah, it was a blast, and it was much needed, especially after getting that Maui trip canceled in the fall. That was a rough one. So, just glad to have gotten some time off, and glad to be back.
So thanks.
How'd you guys survive without me?
We did, and it was tough, man. We had to get Rob Doster on, and it just wasn't the same without you here for a few weeks. So we're glad you're back.
Appreciate it. That Doster show was great.
Hey, thanks.
You guys were awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chat Mob, for putting up with our new ad reads. I kind of read through that 19 times before trying to do it without laughing. So it is what it is.
Kathy's asking. We went to the Big Island. We got a insane ticket deal, but we went like Thursday to Tuesday. So it was kind of a midweek wraparound thing on the weekend to get the better tickets. And I actually came back in time for the show last week, but you guys had Doster on, so it just felt like 4 would be kind of a bit too much on that show, but it was really good.
Yeah, I had to talk to my boys for a show.
I know, that was great.
I'd much rather talk to you.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah. No, just busting their chops a little bit. That was a fun show. Real fun show. All right, you ready to rock and roll?
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
This is Ethan Happ, and I never listen to the assembly call, especially the episodes that Ryan is on.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. How do you keep up with the fire hose of information that comes out almost every day about IU basketball? It's crazy during the off season, and it's even crazier during the season. Well, we've got your back. We send out a free weekly email newsletter on Sunday mornings that rounds up the most important and interesting IU basketball stories from the previous week to keep you up to date on your Hoosiers. Over 8,000 of your fellow IU fans are on the list, and we want you to be there too. So go to join.assembly.com to subscribe for free now. That's join.assemblycall.com. You can also text IU to 66866. That's IU to 66866. Okay, I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Ryan Phillips. And Coach Woodson had a press conference about 25 minutes on Wednesday. And there's some really solid things. We're going to go over some quotes, share the quotes from Coach Woodson, and then get Ryan's thoughts, and I'll share as well. On offense, Coach said this, quote, "I'm going to try to play openly, offensively, and give a lot of players the latitude to do things with the basketball until they prove me wrong." Ryan, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that we should try and play openly. And I've been asking for that for quite some time. But yeah, I think that's true. I think that allowing players to the latitude to make moves and to try and do certain things and to try and do things, especially, of course, within the system. I don't want guys just freelancing out there like crazy, but you've got to trust your players until they give you a reason not to, I think. And especially early in the year, because we're going to get a full non-conference this year. They're going to have time to work things out and decide, okay, who can really attack the rim in the middle of this set we're going to be in? Who can really pull the trigger on an open 3 in this set we're in? who can just back down and break a guy down in the post and all that stuff. So I think that it's smart. I mean, at what latitude does he give Trace Jackson Davis to shoot threes if Trace is going to work on his shot all offseason? All of those things you find out and you let players prove you wrong, and I think that that's a smart decision. And I think it's the way this team needs to go, because I felt like everything was the opposite under Archie Miller. I felt it was all very tightly controlled. And I think having more freedom and more openness is going to help these guys. I think that having a tightly controlled system can work really well in certain environments. But when you're first starting out at a new school with a bunch of guys who've maybe been locked down a bit much, I think that maybe that is the exact right way to go, to sort of open things up and allow guys to have the freedom to make mistakes. Because that was one thing about Archie Miller's system, and I think that we kind of heard from people afterwards that the players are just so afraid to make mistakes and to screw up. And it's like, guess what? You're going to make mistakes. It's about limiting them, but what plays are you going to make? And if you're not making a play because you're afraid you're going to screw it up, that's just not the place you want to be as a college basketball player.
I'm a big proponent of transition offense and shooting the three and spreading the floor. It's just where basketball has evolved. And you watch the tournament, you see the teams that are doing that the best advancing. And it's not an automatic winning situation, but you got to have the talent. And there is no offense, Ryan, that automatically wins you basketball games. And I see, everyone likes the 4 out, 1 in, and there's a lot of names. The pack line, everyone doesn't like the pack line because Archie lost with the pack line. Well, Virginia wins with the pack line. And to understand, Coach Woodson talked about, we'll talk defense here, but he basically mentioned the main elements of the pack line are good defensive elements. But offense needs to be played with confidence. I don't care what you run, flex, motion, continuity, sets. You have to have the freedom in your players to make plays. Because that's the offense is set to get players in position to make scoring plays. Offense doesn't score. It is to get players in position, and they got to have confidence. And I do think having more shooters and more talent allows Indiana to open it up. That's what I'm so excited about. I think the roster as it was constructed last year was not a good free-flowing open up offense. I think you had to try to slow it down a little bit in order to try to be successful. But I think Coach Woodson's come in and trying to correct that with bringing in people to break it down off the bounce, to be able to hit kick out threes, to be able to hit post isolation. And so I think I've been clamoring for faster pace. I love the fast break. And if he brings that, then if that's what he means by playing openly offensively, but the thing I'm most interested in is the confidence level, as you mentioned. I think you have to do that. So here's what he said about defense. I'm going to read through this, and there's several takes that we can go. Really love this one. And then defensively, we're going to try to be a hard-ass defensive team where we get after people and get stops and then rebound the ball and go try to have fun offensively. That's the kind of the mindset going in. Man, I've told Jared this in conversations and people. If I ever get back as a head coach, we're going to work hard on defense and then give kids freedom on offense, because the more free you are, the more plays you make. You got to play defense first to get that license. Your thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah, I think that if you watch videos of Mike Woodson coaching defense, what he wants is guys to get up into people and be aggressive on the ball. And off the ball, it seems like he just wants awareness of everybody. When you're off the ball, you got to know where the ball is. You got to know where your man is. So those are the two things you really have to know, and know where the help is. And the rotation is, if somebody helps over, rotates, you need to step down, rotate your position to somebody else. I think that he wants a tough, hard-nosed defensive team, not necessarily the system being as important as the aggressiveness and just the attitude of the guys playing. So whereas I think that Archie Miller's team was built completely around the system. And of course, he wanted people to be hard-nosed and all of that as well, but it was more focused on, this is the system we run. I think Mike Woodson's defense is going to be more about the individual players stepping up and being more aggressive, tougher, hard-nosed. You're going to know you played a game against a Mike Woodson defense. They're going to beat you up. They're going to do it's just going to be tougher. And I think that's what he wants. Now, that's more of a nebulous concept than is our system, here are the rules. I don't know what his system, what he wants as a quote unquote system, but I just think he emphasizes toughness and he emphasizes physicality and he emphasizes sort of chasing guys. Do not like give guys easy stuff. Get there before they do, I think that's definitely a different mentality, one that Indiana hasn't had for a long time defensively.
Here's the thing about that I liked, and his next quote, in response to the pack line, which everyone was cheering, it says, I'll say from a defensive standpoint, the ball is first and most important. I don't care if you're playing 1-3-1 zone, 2-3 zone, press, whatever, you got to stop the ball. Pack line, stop the ball. When Indiana won, it's because Rob Finney stopped the ball. Cassius Winston beat Michigan State a couple times. You've got to stop the ball. If you don't stop the ball and you're a pressure deny team, that guy's going to lay it up every time because you're not in help. If you are a forced baseline guy and you don't stop the ball, then you got to rotate to the baseline and you got to rotate down, and there's a dump down for a dunk. So it's not the name of the system that matters. It's the execution. It's just the same as an offense. We get caught up a lot in names of defenses and names of offenses, and it's more about understanding where you're going to get beat. But you got to stop the ball first. I am concerned. I am not in the college game a heavy deny passing, out in passing lanes, getting steals, because the dribble is so strong in the college game that you are going to just get toasted if you don't have some help ready in some way. I don't mind if you force it baseline, which is the old traditional Bob Knight way, and help over and cover down, or you do the pack line and force middle. But the drive has to be the number one thing, and Coach Woodson stopping the drive because it's so prevalent. The pressure defenses, for the listeners out there, in my opinion, were so good against teams that went east and west and ran offenses. So pressure defense is good against sets where the ball wants to go wing to the top to the wing. Pressure defense is good, but boy, Brad Underwood brought pressure defense in, deny the wing, and he got torched for 2 years and went 12-17. And he brought in NBA guys, and they said, you got to back off denying all the way outside because people were just driving. Indiana beat Illinois twice because they could just drive the lane and score. So that's my concern. I don't want to get back to the denying passes all over the place. I think basketball has evolved defensively a little bit different. You can be hard-nosed, Ryan, get up in the ball, help aggressively, help the helper. That's another thing that Coach Woodson said. And then you got to put a system in place. This is him, Coach Woodson quote, there's a breakdown. You got to help there. And then that helper has to have help. And then the next man has to have help too. So it's rotation. If you watch the NBA playoffs right now, it's all about rotations and setting up your rotations. That's got to be aggressive in order to stop the ball from getting in the lane, creating kickouts, creating dump downs.
Yeah, I agree. And it's all about focus on, not necessarily a system, but focus on those guys around you. And that's why chemistry is so important to defense. And it's so important to, that's why I think that the best college basketball teams get old and stay old as far as for the long term. I mean, year to year, you might get a young team that makes a run and wins a title, but it's because guys get to know each other defensively and offensively in their system. It's you start to know, oh, hey, he's going there, so I need to be here. And the rhythms of your mates and you communicate better. And I think that is why it's so important, is exactly what Mike Woodson said there about rotating and helping. It's you get to know exactly where the strengths and weaknesses of everybody on that team are, and you find them and you and bought in.
Yeah, I lost you there for a little bit, and then you came back. You bring up what he said next. Is he said, quote, I think great defensive teams work as a unit. Everybody is on a string, and when that damn ball goes up, everybody is responsible for rebounding, so you can go and do what you do the other way. That's that team chemistry that you talked about, and that getting old is helping each other out. And I think the last few years it was more of where do I need to be, and a little lack of awareness of team basketball. Defense is a team defense mentality, and you got to do it physically, and you got to do it tough. And it'll be interesting to see again this team on the court and what that looks like. But I think I think we're going to see some throwback to some of the old Bob Knight concepts. But Coach Woodson again is used to the drive in the NBA. He knows that's a big game. And he's just going to have to decide who he helps off and who he doesn't. He's well aware of that. A couple more things on scheduling. I found this interesting. Coach Woodson said, I'd like to get a team in position first before we start chasing the big boys. I mean, I'm not afraid of competition. I want a team that's competitive, and if we can play, we'll get back to the Kentuckys and Kansas teams of that nature before we get to the Big Ten. I'm open for that. What do you read into that as far as his scheduling for next year?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because he's going to have to get a feel for what works in his system and not. And I think that figuring out what you need to do, particularly early in the season, because we've seen non-conference schedules bury teams that want to get into the NCAA tournament and get a good seed and make a run. So I get this. It's his first year doing it. He kind of probably wants to see what the landscape is before he makes any long-term plans on scheduling and get the team together and figure out, how he's going to map this all out. And I don't have an issue with that. I think that, he's going to be learning on the job a little bit. And that's why it's so incredibly valuable that he has Thad Matta there with him and some assistants who've been, through the wars before to help him out with it. But I don't really have an issue with the scheduling questions because again, it's year one and it's a year where you got to figure your stuff out. And then maybe you feel more comfortable with what you've got next year and understand the rhythms of it and understand, what games are going to be blowouts, what games you can get some guys in, take some guys out, and then save them up for other games. So it's a complicated mess, and he's in his first year. So I don't expect him to navigate that perfectly his first year. I expect, to sort of maybe have an easier time about it this year, and then next year start, building up some better games.
Yeah, I'm a big believer with the strength of the Big Ten and playing 20 games in the Big Ten. You got 11 non-conference games. You got to play at least 5 or 6 against quality Power 6 type conference teams, and then the other 5 not 300 level games where you're going to win by 50, but mix them up a little bit. But you need some get-right games. We talked about this with Rob Doster a little bit, especially early with a new coaching staff. You want to get some games. You want to get everyone in there a little bit. You want to get on film so you can start teaching the way you want your system to be applied in games. You can talk all you want in scrimmage. You can talk all you want in practice, but it's so different to get it on film. And I think that's the thing for me, scheduling. You got to schedule enough to get in the tournament. You can't just schedule 11 easy wins because the committee will look at that. But I also think we talked a lot about confidence. This program has been beaten up and the kids have been beaten up and it's a new system. We need to get some W's and well-earned W's, not just free ones on the schedule in order. And then the last thing here, he was asked about, the current roster and recruiting. And he said something about, quote, I know a lot of these players, they think, well, are you going to recruit over me or on top of me? And I can't tell a kid that I'm not going to recruit on top of him. I'm not going to recruit the best talent available that fits what I'm trying to do, and talked about being a competitor. I kind of appreciated that, honestly, because your job as a coach is to win. And you're going to
find the best players,
Absolutely, Ryan. Your job is to find, and if someone's not producing after 2 or 3 years, we may have a rule here at Indiana where you have that 4-year, deal guaranteed and so forth, and he might not be able to take away I'm not talking about, just pushing kids out, but if you have a better player coming in, he's better as a freshman, you play the best players. And if you're afraid of that, don't come to Indiana and go somewhere where you can get your minutes and playing time and satisfy what you want. We're going to win for Indiana. I like that. I thought it was a breath of fresh air in being honest, because a lot of coaches would skirt around that question to not put out there to AAU coaches and high school coaches and parents that, you come to Indiana and we might get a player the next year that's behind you. That could be used negatively in negative recruiting. But I think that's just a breath of fresh air. And that's some of the honesty that we're hearing from people. You come here, here's what you need to do to play. Here's what you need to do to help Indiana win, and I can help you do that and then get to your goals. I have no problem with the over recruiting part of basketball.
No, it's honesty. And quite frankly, the kids, they just need to worry about themselves. And if they get themselves right and they play right, you're not going to have to worry about people coming in over the top of you, and here's the other thing. It's the nature of the beast in college basketball that teams are going to recruit the best talent. They're going to go after the best talent regardless of position. And, especially with these days when everybody is so much more positionless. I mean, if you get a center one year and you get a center the next, the chances are one of those guys is going to be able to step out on the floor just the way nature of basketball is now and play some on the perimeter and rotate in and out. And also with rotations and things like that, more guys are playing. So I do think that you got to go as a coach. It's your job to go get the best players and put together the most talent on that roster that you can. It has to fit together, but the most talent you can and make it work. And that's not his job to baby players or bring them along. Now, I think that there is some coaching that needs to go on there to make sure that guy reaches his potential and all that. But you also have essentially a duty to the rest of the team to bring the best players and load it up with the best talent.
Yeah, and it's just roster management. The portal is going to change the way things are going on in college basketball, and you never know who's going to stay and who's going to go. And if you coach to make people happy, you'll end up making a lot of people unhappy because it's just impossible. You got to make decisions on 8, 9, 10-man rotation. You're going to leave somebody out. The portal's sitting there at the end of the year. You've got to be ready to fill that, whether you bring people out of the portal or you bring people in from high school. You got to constantly be recruiting right now, and if you're not really running the program the correct way.
The right way. Yeah.
Coming up in our third segment, we'll do some subscriber shout outs and answer your questions. So stick around with us here on the Assembly Call. It was interesting. He did mention some guys that are coming back need to get better in Finney and Galloway and Geronimo. I think that's honest as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's if you've been around a campus, for a while in college basketball, you've got to improve. You can't just stay the same. You can't be the same. And guys do need to get better if they want to keep their spots.
We use this in our program, Ryan. We use the quote, win the wait. Your time will come, but you got to win the wait, which means you've got to keep getting better. You've got to, if you're a sophomore playing JV, and some years you might have been good enough to play varsity, but when you got 2 seniors ahead of you, you're going to wait because there's not time. So you got to win the wait. You can't pout. You can't say, well, I was good enough to play, but there are guys ahead of me. There's just no room for you right now. You got to win the wait. And if you win the wait and have some patience, then good things happen. And I think it's society's tough right now. We're not a very patient society.
Nope.
But if you come in and play for 4 years for Coach Woodson, you're going to be a developed person. You're going to be a developed basketball player. And there are so many examples, Ryan, of players that didn't really get to have a lot of run freshman, sophomore years that really had good, successful time as juniors and seniors. You just hope that there's some patience around college basketball where those players can develop and they're not just bouncing around to the next possible spot.
Yeah, and it just seems like you're right. It's very much instant gratification. If I'm not a star as a freshman, I'm going to look at my options. Now, look, I think players should do that.
Right.
But I think that they should always investigate their options. But at the same time, sticking with it. I mean, look at a guy like Yogi Ferrell. I mean, he was great his freshman year with that. It was a great freshman. With that team that was number one all year. And then he went through 2 really tough years. He could have transferred. He could have gone somewhere else. They really struggled. And he didn't. He stuck with it. And look what happened his senior year. He had one of the best seasons, Indiana's seen in a long time. And just triumphant, ending it by, winning the Big Ten with a big 3. And, it's you get a lot of value about staying put. Now, coach lies to you about what your role is going to be and all that. I mean, that's different. But I think that guys bolting I think they have the right to do it. I think they should be able to leave whenever they want. But guys bolting because, I didn't play right away and maybe things aren't going the way I thought. I don't think that's right. I think that you should stick it out and try and get better and take on that challenge and try to get better, because I think it's incredibly valuable, and it's incredibly valuable experience you take with you for the rest of your life of getting better and getting over the hump.
And it happens at every level. One of the best players I ever coached at a 2A school, Northfield. He was a Division III recruit. All top 10 in scoring, leader in assists, top 10 in rebound. Went to Taylor University, and he sat his freshman year, and he was just really frustrated and wasn't sure he was going to stick it out. And their coach got a hold of me and said, "Hey, can you talk to so-and-so?" And had him over for dinner and said, "Hey, you're going to be a part of this program." He ends up starting for 3 years at Taylor, which was a very successful Division III program here in Indiana, but he had to win that weight. And I just think that's we all have to do that in all of our walks. You start off at entry-level positions. You got to win the weight. If you're not winning the weight, you're falling behind. It's just now that I saw Brett Gerhardt in the chat mob said that the transfer portal is going to put a lot of pressure on that idea because you can be wanted again instead of maybe forcing the hand of the place where you're currently at, even though I do think that's, coaches have the right to leave. Players, there are students who go to one university and it doesn't work out and they transfer to another university just for academic reasons. So this idea of tying players down just because they play basketball, I think is something that's passed, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it's a new world, man. It's just a different world with all this, and they've really opened it up. So we'll see.
Jeff, I like that idea, but Manscaped hairline defensive player of the game.
Hey, everybody, go buy a couple. Go buy a Manscaped, guys. They're great, by the way. I've used it a few times on various parts of the body, but they're good. Go buy some. So go.
You can shave an IU. IU tried it in your chest hair, Coach.
There
Marlowe.
You go. Yeah.
Why
wouldn't you do? I mean, why wouldn't
then
you
paint it red, and there wouldn't be any problem. So we don't send pictures. I was going to say that. Coach Marlowe, don't do that. So,
but yeah,
anyway.
I mean, they're good, and if you guys buy some, we'll have better, ads in the future.
All right, let's get this.
Let's do it.
Rolling. All right, here we go.
Carson Edwards here, and even though I'm teammates with Romeo Langford, I'm still never going to listen to the assembly call. Go Celtics.
Celtics got quite the burden to get out of the hole here, but hope those two are finding a way to help the Celtics win. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Ryan Phillips, and it's segment 3, which can only mean one thing.
Subscriber shout out, subscriber shout out.
The first subscriber shout out comes to us from Chicago. It's TC Malik. TC's favorite Hoosier is better than advertised. It's Max Bielfeldt. His assembly call leader is, quote, Ryan, then Jared. That seems like a very misguided choice, but we do appreciate that.
Jared wrote that, didn't he? Jared wrote that.
That wasn't me. Yeah, that was Jared. And for his special acknowledgement, TC said, thanks for keeping us entertained these past few years. Thanks, TC. We appreciate it. Our second subscriber shout out comes to us from Detroit, Michigan. It's Nathan Herbert. For his favorite Hoosier, Nathan said, I'll have to pick just one. It would be Yogi. I never felt better about how a game was going than when the ball was in Yogi's hands. His senior speech was a Hall of Fame moment, and his family seemed like terrific people too. For his assembly call leader, Nathan wrote, I'm temperamentally most similar to Ryan. My inclination is to rant, and I get a lot of joy out of decompressing with the community after a big game, but Jared is my leader. The positivity and balance that he brings to the discussion are reflective of the traits I aspire to emphasize in myself. And Nathan
that is a misguided choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nathan has a special acknowledgement. I'd shout out Jeff Goodman and the National Basketball Writers who think that the Indiana fan base is too negative. They've obviously not spent enough time with the assembly call community. Y'all make me proud to be a Hoosier. Thank you, TC and Nathan. We appreciate it. And now it's time for our mailbag. All questions were submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about and join at assemblycall.com.
It's not that good, but it's not that bad. It's Jay's mediocre question.
So Jay says, when things get back to normal, what's the first thing you will do when you set foot in Bloomington?
Wow, that's a good one. I've got kind of a tie here. When I go with my family, I always visit the Union. We go go to the bookstore and find stuff. And I spent a ton of time at the Union as a college kid because the journalism school was right next door. Now it's since moved over to Franklin Hall, but it used to be in the Ernie Pyle Hall right out in front of the Union. So between classes, I would just go chill in the Union. I'd go find places to go and study or, not study, most likely take a nap. But when I go back, I'm going to Nick's. I'm going to go sit somewhere and just, I don't know, a burger, maybe some chicken strips, some biz fries. I don't know, but I'm going to Nick's. That's my go. That's my home away from home, man. When I lived in Indiana after graduating, I was working in Columbus at the Columbus Republic and also working from home on my own website. I would just go sit at Nick's for lunch because they had Wi-Fi back when not everyone had Wi-Fi at their restaurant. And I would just go sit there for like 3 hours, got to know the staff. They all liked me, shockingly. And I, for 6 years, that was my 3 times a week. I'd be in Nick's all afternoon, just, drinking a water and iced tea and having lunch and hanging out. That is a home away from home for me. I'm happy every time I walk in the front door.
Yeah, that's Mrs. Tonsoni and I are taking a Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening trip to Bloomington here in a week. Just because it's back to normal, we're going to go to all the spots. We're going to go to Buffalo's. We're going to hit Little Zagreb's for an anniversary dinner. We're going to stay at the Graduate right there on Kirkwood, so we can end up at Nick's. And we're ready to get back to Bloomington. That's the first thing. And then I can't wait. The first home football game is 7:30 at night, which means incredibly long amount of time for tailgating.
Someone's going to be fairly lubricated for that game, and it's not me.
I have a new plan of, one adult beverage and 2 waters for this year, as I need to represent the assembly call a little bit better than the last tailgate that everyone keeps bringing back up. But yeah, Jay,
one of the most fun text threads I've ever gotten was during that game from a certain man who's also on this podcast right now. It was hilarious.
Yeah. So, Jay, that was not mediocre. You need to get back to form. That was an outstanding question. We all miss Bloomington, and we all miss things being, back to normal, and it's getting there. All right. Glenn says, with the addition of Michael Durr to the roster, how likely are we to see Logan Duncan redshirt this season?
We're not going to know until they're on campus and working out this fall, I think. I mean, they'll be on campus this summer working out, but I don't think we'll have any inclination as to how that's going to go this fall. I do still think, with Jerome Hunter going, who could swing down and play the 4 and all that, I do think they're a little thin up front to redshirt him. I don't think it's going to be a plan going into redshirt him. If they don't need him early on and don't play him a ton, and they decide, you know what, we could probably get by without him, they might. But I don't think anybody's going to go in thinking this guy's a redshirt, I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to be wide open. It's hard to really gauge that. We're also going to see what Durr can do and how much he's going to play, how active he's going to be. I think he'll be certainly in the rotation solidly to begin with, but we'll see. And the thing about Duncan is he's a guy who's improving tremendously over the last couple of years. And so he might step on campus, get playing against these top level guys and earn his way into the rotation. We don't know. It's probably too far away out to Glenn. I'm sorry to answer this question. I don't think they're planning on redshirting anybody. And I think that we will see maybe somebody will, the other guys step up and somebody puts themselves in that situation in the fall.
I don't mind using red shirts. I think Villanova and some other programs do it really well. It has to be the right situation, has to be communicated extremely well with the player and the family, and that's another way to win the
You
weight.
have to present them with a plan. Like, this is why
Yes.
we're redshirting you.
Yes. And he would fit that plan if you did have enough rotation, right? If someone else could play that 4, when Race maybe could play some 5 and some other things like that. We talked a little bit about this on last week's show, but we'll get your take on it. Are there some NCAA basketball rules that need to be changed or modified?
The charge rule, 100%.
Absolutely.
Needs to be changed. I don't
agree.
And I don't know exactly what it should be, but not what it is now. And I also think that the call of the charge with the head behind they need to change that as well, because if you look cool doing it as refs think they do, and they emphasize and they overemphasize, it's like the strikeout call. They ring guys up because they want to show off, and subconsciously at least. So the charge call needs to be fixed. I mean, whatever it is, because here's the thing. Nobody, even the officials, knows what the official rule is. Nobody. And they can't explain it to you, why one play is one way and one play is another. So I think that needs to be altered. That's the big one. I know there's been some talk about, goaltending and things like that, maybe going to the international rules with goaltending, and I could see that. And I would also expand to 6 fouls. That would be my instead of 5. I think guys are too athletic, too big, and I think there are too many rules about freedom of movement and stuff like that. You're seeing guys get fouls too quickly nowadays because they're too athletic. I mean, you're seeing guys like bump into each other incidentally, and they're calling for a foul. I think that moving to 6 fouls would be interesting. I know I'm old fashioned, but I don't want to go to quarters. I love that college basketball is different. It has halves, but I think those are the 3 major ones that people are talking about. The international goaltending, that's just kind of a me thing. I kind of like it. I like guys going up on the rim and getting the ball. But yeah, I think that the 6 fouls and the charge are the big ones for me, and I'd like to stay with halves.
I agree with you on the charge. I was kind of half and half on the 6 fouls thing until I read that somebody thought it increased fouling and slowed the game down when they tried it a few years back. So that
maybe
would be
test it in the NIT one year or something. Maybe do a test with it.
I would like to see the free throws change from 1-on-1 to 2 shots, and maybe if we're not going to quarters,
I agree with that too. Yeah,
reset at 10 minutes and get rid of the 1-on-1. You shouldn't get rewarded for a negative play defensively. Yeah. That should be a bigger penalty if you choose to apply that in your defensive scheme late. You should get 2 free throws, or if you foul too much. That's one thing. I want to see a new time limits on reviews. While I know we have it and we want to get the thing right, the reviews at the end of the games are just killing basketball. And too many timeouts, free timeouts are given, and now they want to take timeouts away from coaching. If you just limit some of that stuff, I think the game would speed up.
It's fair.
And Bob asked, why is NCAA men's the only basketball team in halves instead of quarters? It's probably because of money, and TV timeouts is the number one reason. They've already the contracts are already set for a certain number of commercials at the designated times. I think that's why there's hesitancy there. I cut off this person's name when I copied it, so I apologize for not having your name from the community. But your thoughts on Jerome's departure from the program? Does this give any indication of how Coach Woodson's going to run the program? You haven't been on since that's happened. Your thoughts?
No, I don't think it's an indication. I think it's just an indication of he brought in some other people. Jerome, I think it's a good fit with Xavier, first of all, for Jerome. I think that's a place he'll get coached, and I think that it's a good fit. It's closer to home. I am sad to see Jerome go. I think he's a good kid, and it's really unfortunate, the stuff he dealt with injury-wise and all that. But I also think that there's sort of a full speed ahead thing here at Indiana with Woodson and trying to turn this around quickly. And maybe some guys were going to get left in the dust a little bit. And I think that he was a candidate for that to happen. But I don't think it's, I think it works out for everything. It could be the kind of thing that works out for everybody. And I wish him well. And I certainly will root for Jerome. I thought he's a good kid.
That's another thing where I thought he was as honest as he could be without sharing details. And in fact, he said, I don't want to get into the details, but he said they just didn't mix. And sometimes when you take over a program as a coach, you don't see eye to eye with certain players, and sometimes you got to move on from those players that had played in the previous years. And I just think that's the situation, and we'll move forward. Kevin Llewellyn asked this. It seems like we have a good mix of players who can play multiple positions. Point guards, 2 and 3s, 3s and 4s, 4s and 5s. From what you have seen on film, where do you see our biggest hole for our offense right now, Ryan?
Geez, I don't know. Probably on the wing, and I think that there's some decent wing talent, but I also think that you don't really have an established wing scorer right now, and I think that that's what's going to be interesting moving forward to see who steps up into that role.
And
I think there's talent. I just don't think we have an established wing scorer.
I said last week the 4. The 4 needs to be stretched the floor. We've had too many spacing issues with this program for the 4 years. We need to space the floor, and so I'm concerned about the 4 making enough shots. Maybe Kopp goes down there to play some to get that offensive spacing. Kevin also asked, do you see us playing any hard-nosed full-court press defense during a game? It seems in the past we only tried it at the end of the game when we were behind, and we usually didn't perform very well.
Probably not a full court press. There might be a token pressure sort of to, harass somebody coming up the floor, but I don't know if I see full court press. Oh, you want to know another rule they could change since there's a shot clock now? No backcourt rule. Or no clock.
10 second.
The 10 second. There's no need for that anymore. Because you've got a shot clock. So you're forcing them to get up the court anyway. So that could be one. And I know they've changed that in some levels of basketball. But yeah, I think that I don't know if we would go full court press, but maybe, I don't think that's something that they don't really run press in the NBA. It's more of just hey, pick up your man further up the court. I think that there could be some of that, but I don't think it'll be something we plan around or go with.
Yeah, I don't. If you're going to be a pressing team, that's going to be your mantra from the start of the game to the end. Like an Arkansas and some of the Havocs with Shaka Smart at VCU. I don't see Woodson doing that. I think he'll use some pressures, maybe to eat some shot clock, those kinds of things. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't know any full court pressure too. And again, it just depends on his mentality. Some coaches like to get out and press and be pressure defense, and they don't mind if they give up points. Me particularly, I don't like scoring. I like if you score on me, it ticks me off. So I'm a little more cautious in approach. We'll see what Coach Woodson has there. Phil Davis says, what one skill in particular player are you looking to see for IU to be successful this year? Example, Rob being more aggressive with the ball, or Ray shooting the 3. A player and a skill that you're looking to see be successul this year.
Ray shooting the 3 is really good. I mean, that's a good, if as you said, the stretch 4, if Ray can step out and hit a jumper, I want to see the whole team shooting better. That I know that's not what the question is, but the whole team across the board starting to shoot better. I think number one for this team, is Christian Lander hitting jump shots. That is number one. If Christian Lander can hit a jump shot, it's going to make people have to guard him on the perimeter where he's quick enough to go around them, get into the paint, and either finish, which I think he's really going to be good at, finish, or the defense draws to him, he dishes. I think Christian Lander hitting jump shots, number one for Indiana.
The first two were my first two. Race has got to hit the 3 if he's going to play the 4. Whoever plays the 4 has to hit the 3, or at least be a threat from the 3, as we talked about before. I agree with you on Lander. I will also add Trace Jackson Davis. What's his face up basketball game? Can he hit 15-footers? Can he hit some 3s? Just enough. I don't want him taking an awful lot, but just enough to throw some different wrinkles at teams other than just having him score in the low post. And JD DeFries says, what player are you most interested seeing playing for a Woodson coach team?
That's interesting. There's a lot of ways you could go here. You could say Rob, because maybe opening up the floor a little bit will give him more room to operate. Xavier Johnson will be interesting because he's more of a downhill player. Parker Stewart, because we're going to emphasize shooting. I mean, there's so many ways you can go here. I do think it's going to be interesting to see Race and how they use him. Instead of using the two bigs down low, how do you use Race Thompson in a system that isn't going to be having him, post with his back to the basket? How do you use him? How do you get the best out of him? Because I'm sorry, like Race needs to play on both ends of the floor for this team because of what the intangibles he provides of energy, going to get the ball, his rebounding, his ability to defend all over the floor, his ability to step out on the floor and at least look competent, controlling, maybe not shooting, but commanding the ball. He's going to have to play. So how does he play in this system? That's one thing I'm really interested in seeing how that works out. And also the obvious answer as we touched on, and I know I'm using the same players back to back, but hey, I didn't order these questions. Is Christian Lander, with an offense that's more open and free, does he get to freelance more? Does he get to do what he's best at? Are we looking at, high school AAU Christian Lander, or is it more like freshman year Christian Lander? What do we see here? And so those are the two things I'm most interested about. Obviously, the transfers in, we don't know their games as well. We can break them down on film, but we have a really good feel for the guys who are already here. And those are the two guys who are already here that I really want to see. And I also want to see what they do with Trace Jackson Davis. I mean, is he out on the floor more, or is he going to be, stapled to the post until he can step out and maybe shoot a jumper? Or are they going to run a lot of pick and roll with him? Because that's what they do in the NBA. They're going to run a lot of pick and roll with him, pick and pop if he can hit a jumper. It's just going to be interesting how he utilizes all three of those guys differently than the previous regime.
For me, I agree with all of those, and there's so much that I'm interested in seeing from this Coach Woodson-led team. For me, it's Parker Stewart, the most interesting. I want to see if he can be a knockdown 35-40% shooter. The closer he gets to 40%, the better Indiana's going to be. We haven't had that kind of pure shooter for a while, and it'd be good to see him. Just a favorite of mine, not even knowing him very well, but what he went through with trying to play for his dad and having sons that I have coached at various levels, and then having the loss of his dad. There's no one that I'm rooting for.
Easy guy to root for.
More than Parker Stewart to come out and start banging 4 or 5 threes and just having the national audience talking about how smooth his game is after taking some time out. So
that's it. We're done. No more questions.
That'll do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing a lot of the music that you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next week or sooner if any news breaks.
Take it from me, Yogi Ferrell. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
You might get beat today, but each day you got to get better.
Hey, the show's over. Here I come, Coach Tonsoni.
That's a wrap.
That was a good one. Coach, somebody was mentioning in the chat, and I covered high school basketball in Indiana forever. God, how many years did I cover? 6? About 6 years. They got to put a shot clock in, right? In high school basketball.
Eventually, yes. How long it is as a defensive-minded coach, I'd love it because we can guard you, and we have long possessions. We talk as a staff sometimes how to increase the pace, not because our offense, but because our defenses forces teams to really be selective, and we don't give up a lot of stuff quickly.
Yeah.
And so the points, the number of offensive opportunities are lower because teams take longer possessions. Well, if we could speed them up with the clock. Now, do we have the offensive firepower to do that? Do we have any late shot clock ball screen guys? Maybe not. So maybe it'll even out and we won't be worth a darn. But yeah, I'd like to see.
Because look, I graduated from high school in 98. And I think in 96, they put in a shot clock in California. It was 35 seconds, which is a little long, but it was the first time they did it. And
I have to interrupt because people are asking for this, and then we can continue this discussion.
Sure.
When the show is over, but there's more to be said. Pour yourself a drink now. Put the kiddies to bed. It's time to cut loose. No more censored remarks. So cozy up, chat mob. It's time for AC After Dark.
Gotta have a little butthole in you. San Diego chicken shit. Here I come, Coach Mike. I think I kissed a lot of girls. I think I might even kiss a lot of guys. I don't know. These are all rumors. I don't know what's true and what's not. Turn your butt cheeks on. Assembly Call co-host of Redshirt.
So there you go, Chat Mob. There's your AC After Dark theme music.
Rejected Bond theme music songs.
Yes. So anyway, we're talking shot clock in high school.
Really going to get back on track after that? I just think that they need to have it. I do. I think that I don't love the stall, the Indiana stall. I don't love that offense. I hated it in high school. People would do it out here. The four corners or just hold the ball for, you get a 2-point lead and they just hold it for the rest of the half. I don't like that. I've never liked it. I think that it's not really the point of basketball. The point of basketball is competition, and you're not really competing at that point. I know coaches and players, they have to do it because that's just a smart play, but you're forcing them into a situation where they have to do it. I don't love that. You're making a situation where it could be a 1-0 game or a 2-0 game. And I just don't think that's basketball.
My issue is with the execution of a shot clock when you go to a variety of high schools and who can hit the shot clock correctly and not correctly and reset after rebounds.
Yeah, you run into that, but
because it's hard to just get good people in gyms to start and stop the clock. But your stall ball, one of my greatest coaching moments. We were in one of my first years coaching at Northfield High School. We were 4-17 playing the number 1 ranked team in the state who was undefeated. And I sold the kids once we got the draw on holding the ball. And it was, we were down 5-3 at the end of the first quarter. We were down 11-7 at halftime. And we held the ball for 5.5 minutes at the end of the third, down 16-11. All I wanted to do is get it into the fourth quarter. And they, trapped us on an elbow catch, and we threw to the corner, and a kid hit the 3, and it was 16-14. And the crowd,
fourth,
going into the fourth, we were 4 and something, and against the number 1 team in the state, we were only down 2. We ended up getting beat by 16 once we started playing.
Once you open the offense up a little,
once we opened the offense up a little bit. But boy, I was being called names, getting yelled at by the opposing. And the other coach wouldn't come out. So we just said, we're going to try to get to the fourth quarter where something crazy could maybe happen. But I agree with you in theory. Yeah. I think it's time, whether it's 30 or 35, I might see a longer one, just to make sure the teams don't hold it, type of deal. But I think it's gotta come in. So,
yep. Well, that was it for AC After Dark, everybody. Let's do the outro song. It's Just kidding. I'm kidding. I got to play it again.
Should I believe in the high?
It's getting hard to keep track of all these.
Way too many. Yeah.
Yeah, way too many. But anyway, so everyone, that'll do it for tonight. Thank you for being with us. I will be off for a few weeks. Nothing major, but I do have some health issues with here in the family that we need to take care of, a surgery coming up. So I'm going to take a couple weeks off to take care of my family. So if you're wondering why I am radio silent for a while, I might be checking in. I might join the chat mob, but I got to take care of Mrs. Tonsoni here for the next couple weeks. She's my number 1 and will always be my number 1. And so
she's like my number 3. So
good. I'm glad.
So
I'm going to miss doing the shows, but to everyone else, the regulars, the originals will be here to take care of you guys till I come back in mid-June. So until then, I will try to stay up to date in the community as much as possible. Appreciate all of you very much, and looking forward to seeing everyone at the tailgates this fall and getting back here in June. So that'll do it.
Coach. Love you.
All righty. We'll see you, man.